And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. I cannot express to the people how bright it is in this room. It is so bright.
And you mean like intelligent?
I'm squinting right now.
Can
you not see?
It.
I'm
the freaking overhead lights are on.
It's like, have you ever seen the lights in a surgery and how it's just like the whitest of white? Just like that's what it's like.
I feel like you think you were so cool. Have you ever, like, you wonder, guys like, you know, NBA stars and rappers and stuff who wear sunglasses constantly in their life?
Yes.
And you wonder how they actually function in a room with, like, because everything is so, like, they're in the club and they have sunglasses on.
Correct.
And you think they must have messed up their vision. Like, they're like a bat. They can't go outside when the sun's out because it's too freaking bright. That's what I think you were. I think you thought you were so cool from like 17 to 25. You wore I think you slept in sunglasses.
They're called stunner shades, in case you were.
What are they called?
Stunner shades.
Okay, I see. I didn't even know that.
Okay, no, I didn't live in them. I did have a pair though. That was like the thing when I was going through college. That was when they first started making like the bigger, colorful, not like Ray-Bans, but they literally were like stunner shades. You don't remember that?
I think you've messed up your ocular stuff.
Ocular.
There's the word. I was smart enough to come up with ocular, and then I wasn't smart enough to have a word to follow it up, so I went with stuff.
And you had to leave it from there.
I mean, this is like a normal. When you went to school, did they not have overhead lights?
This is not a normal. This isn't. I will say that I certainly exaggerate the brightness, but this is not normal. No one would define the brightness of this room as normal.
Is this not like a classroom, bright? Is your classrooms dimmer than this?
I don't think classrooms.
Are your classrooms?
I don't think classrooms are this bright typically. I will say.
You don't think?
I will say this: classrooms are usually bigger, thus maybe it helps. But this.
So there's more lights. Bright. We have 3 overhead lights on.
This is bright. There are doctors who would walk into this room and they would be like, "This is perfect for surgery." Like that's how bright it is in this room. This is like a sterile white, is how I would describe this brightness.
Oh dear God. There's a sterile white behind you. By the way, I do have decorations and they're coming.
Ooh, that's exciting. I definitely need something.
There are some doctors who obviously need more light.
Yeah. Sometimes we start off the show with something serious. Sometimes we start off the show. Today, we don't have a lot of serious, but we have some really interesting topics.
Today, I'm hungry. Yeah, my first thought of the day is I should have eaten before we started.
Nice. Do you elaborate off of that? Or
I just didn't.
You just wanted everyone to know that.
Yes.
You had to interrupt my intro to the topic to let everyone.
Well, I could tell you weren't going to ask me how I was doing today, and I was a little hurt.
Were you really upset?
Because I didn't answer today. I was ready.
How are you feeling?
Hungry.
All right.
Now you can go.
So there's this really a crazy story out of India. We've heard the stories about people being buried alive and all these things. This is a story where somebody was literally put into a freezer, was still alive, came out 6 hours later. And the only reason they took them out of the freezer was that somebody had showed up to identify the body. Had nobody had shown up to identify the body, who knows how long they would have left this body in the freezer at the morgue. 6 hours later, they pull them out. The family relative comes up to identify the body, puts their hand on the cheek. Their face is still warm. They take a pulse. There's still a pulse. They rush them off to the hospital. The person survives after being assumed dead and put in a freezer in the morgue. I'm
guessing there is a doctor who spent the next day answering a lot of questions.
Yeah. Outside of a pulse. See, this is my naivety. How do a doctor proclaims somebody dead when they no longer have a pulse?
It would seem that way.
Okay. So at some point, you would assume that it was decided that this person no longer had a pulse.
I guess. I'd love to hear the story behind it. Of my vast medical knowledge, I can't believe that pulses disappear and come back.
Okay.
So we know people pass out, people lose consciousness to come back to consciousness, all that stuff. But I don't think the heart stops and then restarts. So
I don't know how. So this is the main story. The guy's last name is Kumar. We're going to call him Kumar. He works as an electrician. He was taken to a hospital after he was hit by a speeding motorcycle in the Indian city of Moradabad. Doctors,
wait, where?
Moradadbad.
Moradadbad?
M-O-R-A.
That's a great name.
D-A-B-A-D.
I'm for Moradadbad.
Moradadbad. Doctors at
Not
the
to be
district,
confused with bad dad,
That's
but
right.
dad bad.
That's right. More doctors at the district hospital pronounced Kumar dead on arrival. So it was just, they pushed him in.
They didn't even he looks bad.
I guess not.
Throw him on ice.
The emergency medical officer had seen the patient at 3 a.m. and there was no heartbeat. He had examined the man multiple times. That's what the chief medical superintendent is saying to the local press. The hospital morgue at the government medical facility at 4:30 a.m. received Kumar's body. It was kept in the freezer overnight for a period of at least 6 hours. The next day, Kumar's family members arrived at the morgue with the police to sign a document to agree to an autopsy after identifying his body. Kumar's sister-in-law, along with 4 family members, entered the morgue for the procedure. When his sister-in-law touched Kumar's face, she was shocked to still find signs of life by telling that his cheeks were still warm. Incredible. Incredible.
Could you imagine, by the way, if you work there and you're around dead bodies all the time, could you imagine the worker who is sitting there and from inside the freezer they hear this?
Oh, it would be the worst.
You would be.
Did you ever have fears or anything like that, like being buried alive or?
No, not
it's never
being buried
crossed your mind.
Just
like
what's under the bed, what's in the closet.
That's always been yours.
I had a teacher who said that when he was in high school, he worked in a hospital, and one of the jobs that they're like, you just did whatever, and there were times that you had to take dead bodies down to the morgue, and they were on a rollaway stretcher or whatever, and there was a sheet over it.
Okay.
But there were times, that's what you did.
Yeah.
The patient passed away, you took him down to the morgue. Well, one of the aspects of as bodies pass away, sometimes there are still, I guess, random brain firings and muscle contractions and things like that. And he swears that while he was in the elevator, the body sat up. It was still dead. It wasn't alive, but under the sheet, the body sat because the muscles contract. Now, I don't know if it sat up and went cross-legged, but that there was enough of a movement that he was as panicked as he could be in the elevator.
I've heard of twitching. I've heard of flatulence, things like that happening. But that would just creep.
Could you imagine? I mean, even if it just sat up 4 inches,
it just jolted.
Just enough to be you could not scream enough until would you start? What would you do? I mean, I'm sure there's guys whose natural reaction would be to just pummel the body because the zombies are here.
2 things there. I've never been afraid of being buried, but I've always when I watch people do cave diving or people going through tight spaces.
Have you ever?
Oh, I get my palms get sweaty watching these people.
I know what you mean. In the Mission Impossible movies, when they're crawling through the air ducts.
Yeah.
You're like, what happens if the duct gets narrower and you can't go backwards?
The underwater cave divers blow my mind. Have you ever seen that on the Discovery Channel? And
I just think being eaten by a shark would be about one of the worst ways to go. And so the whole underwater diving just scares because you just turn around and there's
these people are
what
going
was his
through
name in Nemo? Bruce. You turn around and there's Bruce the shark and it's all over.
Well, these people are going through these crevices. You can barely fit through these things, and it's what if you're just never going to get back out? It's just never.
No, I'm with you.
That part of it.
You know
mind.
what those people are? They're just braver than we are.
The other part that this made me think of too is I've always wondered the initial, when you come out of a coma, having to come to grips with the fact that time moved without you, which I know we technically do that when we go to sleep every night. But this idea of just you were alive, things went forward and you just wake up one day. And that part of it, that made me think of it this guy just snapping to.
It happened to Steven Seagal once. And the neat thing about Steven Seagal was he was in this coma for 7 years. he wakes up in the hospital, and literally within 20 minutes, he was fighting people off and running to his escape.
What movie is it?
I don't remember.
You can't remember what it is?
No.
You don't remember? But that one always, I mean, the idea of snapping to and just knowing, like, and them telling you're in a coma and, like, you just have no idea. I mean, this guy's going to wake up and they're going to have to explain to him that he was just in a freezer for 6 hours.
Is that something you want to tell him? Oh, yeah, you're going to tell him because he's going to cash in on it.
You have to tell him, right? You can't not tell him.
In India, do you win a lawsuit like that?
I don't know. Are there lawsuits?
What kind of government do they have in India? I don't know.
I'm not sure. This was one, I didn't mention this to you, but this goes along with another one I brought to you yesterday. You can order weed off of Uber in Canada now. So the ride-sharing app is pairing up with weed retailer Tokyo Smoke to allow people in Ontario to order weed for pickup. So the same way you order your ride, you can now order weed, cannabis, whatever else you want to call it.
And right now, the WWE is thinking, why did we never have a wrestler named Tokyo Smoke?
That's a very, very good point. Speaking of which, all right, hold on, time out. Let's put this topic on pause because I hate wrestling, but I have.
Did you watch?
I heard. Well, I heard, and then I watched the guy attack the wrestler. Is that what you're referring to?
Oh no, I was. Sunday night was not SummerSlam, a Survivor Series. My son and I actually watched some WWE on Sunday night.
Okay,
because
so
the Survivor Series is awesome.
So I'm going to try to look it up here in a second. A fan actually, and I don't think this was set up. From everything that I read and everything that I saw, I don't think this was like planned. A fan, there's one of the wrestlers was walking back to the stage, like where they come out of. He's walking around the ring, he's walking up, and a fan comes like around the corner 1,000 miles an hour and just like spears himself into the WWE wrestler. And they like roll onto the ground. Security, like 6 guys from security have to come and like jump on it and try to rip them off and away. It was insane. You didn't see this at all.
I did not. No.
I'm really upset because I
actually
had like a wrestling thing that I thought you would be interested in.
Because, so here are the 2 choices. Either it was totally not staged.
Right.
And it's crazy.
Seth Rollins. Does that sound
Seth
familiar?
Rollins, yeah. He's the one that got tackled.
He's the one. So WWE wrestler.
He's it.
Yeah. So attacked during match at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York.
It could very well be a gimmick.
Yes.
And that now they have this guy who they are grooming and he's on the come. And so this is his way in. Maybe. Although the scary aspect of that is that then they create this for every other drunken musclehead who thinks his way into the WWE is to attack Seth Rollins on his way out. So I would doubt that.
So ESPN is reporting the fan was taken into custody in New York after the attack at the Barclays Center. So that's the ESPN report.
Okay.
A local news station says a 24-year-old man was arrested on Monday night after attacking WWE wrestler Seth Rollins during a live broadcast of Monday Night Raw at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. So news outlets are reporting this as if it was an attack. This was not part of the show. This wasn't staged. And in the last 24 hours, WWE has not come out and said like this was part of.
And it's that like
thing.
Seth Rollins is a heel. Like he is the villain. He is hated.
Okay.
He is great.
Pretty crazy.
Like his character.
I can't.
So he would be hated. No, I did not.
And this guy, and it happens so quick. You can't really see the guy's face, the attacker. Like, okay. I mean, when I say this guy was like full sprint, no hesitation. He comes around the corner. He leaves his feet and goes right into this.
Well, if you're going to do it, you got to bring it.
There was no hesitation. Zero on this guy. That. He was going after him.
All right. So anyway, back to Tokyo Smoke. Yes. You can order. So they'll just deliver it to your house?
They'll just deliver it to your house?
It's just weed delivery in Canada?
Correct.
So, hey, Junior, you order the pizza. Honey, you order the weed. And there's our night.
And you got it. It's done. Are we, like, this is super corny. Are we fully aware that we are no longer, like, the cool country? Like, do you think people realize that, like, in a weird way, we're kind of like the Puritan?
We're the cool country.
You think so? we do some pretty Puritan stuff when you look at what other countries are doing.
Well, what's crazy is, and not, this is a much more serious answer than you wanted. I had this discussion at some level of my education. I think it was at Montoursville, but it may have been in college or whatever. But the contradictory of term, because when America was founded and the Pilgrims came over, and there was the aspect of people that were looking for religious freedom.
Yeah.
And then there was also the aspect of people that like, these are the hoodlums, get them out of here.
Right.
So you had this, it was not, it's almost like the political versions of today. We had two extremes. We had a very, very Puritan, religious-based, they risk life and limb just because they didn't want the king to tell them how to worship.
Sure.
And then there were these other people who were, I don't want to say hedonistic, but they were very like, who cares? And so America has always battled with this, you know, kind of the in God we trust, and then uber freedoms,
Sure.
and I want to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
So it's always been there.
I still think we're the greatest. Like when I just look, even now, when I look at just the way we handle things and talking to other people, I think there's things we can do way better. I still think like basic concepts, we're the greatest country in the world. But there is certainly like that Puritan aspect when you think about the idea of like a country directly above us. You're just going to like, it's just order your weed with your Uber. And there are some states that still are so far away from that. Like the idea that weed would even be legal, let alone order it through your ride share. Like there's states that aren't even.
Well, yeah. I mean,
close.
when you talk about Europe, and they talk to, you know, drinking ages in Europe are much lower. It's much less of a.
Mm-hmm. It's not a taboo.
Taboo is the right word.
Right.
Like beaches and toplessness, it's much more open
Right.
and much more. So, whereas in the States, it's like, oh my God.
But that's my point is, can you be the cool country when other countries are having topless beaches? And, you know, you think of like Amsterdam and you think of just cannabis, and you look at what other, and I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying though, like when you think of the aspect of like the dynamics of peer to peer, when you look country to country, I don't know how anyone could say that America is like the rebellious, cool teenager right now.
Well,
like we're not.
Okay, I get that. There's a couple ways to go. The rebellious, cool teenager is only cool if you're a teenager.
Yeah. Sure.
Once you're like 40, the rebellious, cool teenager is just the same idiot that we were when we were teenagers.
Compared to other countries, though, aren't we? How are we ever not the teenager compared to other countries? Is what I would say.
Because we're the ones with all the purse strings.
Maybe. I see what you're saying.
But I do think the cool aspect, the rock and roll, the technology pushing, the aspects of society that really does think we're cool and that makes us cool, looks at the Puritan aspect and laughs at them too.
Okay.
So they've separated ourselves like we are not them.
Okay.
So as like the cool countries, I think the cool aspect of America relates to the Canada and relates to the Europe a lot more than they relate to the other half of America.
Interesting. Because the cool, like in this analogy that this hypothetical analogy, the cool kid isn't necessarily always the best or the smartest or the right. Like,
absolutely not.
But so it's not so much like a downplay of America as much as it just is. I think there's this aspect of like we're the young country, and but like I don't know. Like I don't view us that way. I feel like maybe other people do. Where we're this, like even you brought up technology. Like we are not the leaders in technology anymore. Like we're not. We're not.
We founded Apple.
Yeah, but we're not the leaders.
Who is?
Like there's other countries that are gonna have 5G before us. Like we're not even.
It doesn't matter.
You don't think that matters? You don't think that matters?
We created Apple.
You don't think that matters? Don't rest on your laurels.
We created Microsoft.
I'm just saying, I understand that. But Microsoft's old. Like Apple's been around. Like we are, like you're resting on your laurels.
I'm old.
We shouldn't do it.
Tokyo Smoke. That's just should have been a WWE champion. You know who could have kicked the crap out of Seth Rollins?
Who?
Tokyo Smoke.
Probably.
Who beats Tokyo Smoke?
As a wrestling name?
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Pretty good.
Right now, Vince McMahon just called
He's
a meeting
upset.
today. He's like, how did we not find this one
How did
first?
we not come up with Tokyo Smoke? It's pretty good. I'll give you that.
Do you know, by the way, he was on the other night when my son and I were watching.
Vince McMahon was? You lost me
Survivor Series.
Okay.
78 years old.
Really?
And he's still like.
I knew he was old. I never would have guessed 78.
He's 78.
Huh.
And he was still in the bit. He was still, you can tell he's older. He's not nearly, but he's still 78, going. Still going.
Bring up the, because we don't have much time left today. Bring up the Baker Mayfield. Because I kind of know, but I kind of don't. But there's a whole kind of like relationship dynamic to that is really interesting.
By the way, and just before did I tell you this? I have a friend who worked for the WWE. He was part of the creative team that came up with stuff.
Because it's fake.
It's scripted.
Because it's fake.
He said for the people who care about he said Stephanie was great to work with. Stephanie McMahon is Vince's daughter, who is a big wig in the company. She's married to Triple H, who's also big. And he's like, as like professionally, like she's very smart. But he's like, she was not like a pain in the ass. My dad owns the company, and you'll do what he's like. She was great to work with.
Yeah.
So for whatever that is worth.
Nice.
You always wonder, like, when dad's kids get brought in, is there like this do they work? Do they not? And so anyway, I just thought that was interesting to pass that along from someone who was on the inside.
Sweet.
So then what are we talking about? Baker Mayfield.
I think the Baker Mayfield for like 5 minutes. I think it's interesting. I think there's a whole relationship conversation about this.
Well, I didn't even read it yet, but Baker's still young, 26.
He's not anywhere close to 30 yet.
And he is done. His commercials are great.
Yes, they are.
He is very. I love the one where he's had the yard sale, and this big lineman comes up because are these my shoulder pads? And he's like, they could be. Make me an offer. And the guy just walks away with them.
He's 26 in a couple months.
Okay. So he's 25 years old. He's married at 25 years old, which like that could be an issue in its own right. So his wife is obviously young. Cleveland is struggling. Baker is supposed to be this like next great thing, and Cleveland was supposed to turn the corner. People are picking him to be a Super Bowl contender, and they're struggling to be 500. They barely beat the Lions last week. Now, I know Steeler people say, well, the Steelers tied the Lions, but they didn't have Roethlisberger because he was out.
Okay.
If Roethlisberger would have played against the Lions, the Steelers would have beat him by 30.
Okay.
But they beat the Lions 13-10, and they're still the Lions. And and so apparently Mrs. Mayfield went to social media and just started saying the reason that we suck is not my husband, it's all you other players. I didn't read it, but that's generally the gist.
Okay. First question. Is Baker Mayfield upset?
Yes.
Okay. I agree. But see, that dynamic, this is the part that I think is hard about it. Do you think Baker Mayfield's wife views this as a job, or do you think Baker Mayfield's wife views this as a sport? Because if she views it as a sport, I don't think she's doing anything wrong. If she views it as her husband's profession, then she's way out in left field. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yes. But here's the funny thing. You know who else's wife has gone to social media?
Tom Brady.
Giselle has gone, and like, if these guys could catch the freaking ball, we would have won.
Sure.
I understand what it is like to have a relative, not a spouse, but a relative who is publicly criticized and you feel like defending.
Sure.
My whole question is, did Baker come home and say, honey, we need to talk? Or did Baker come screaming through the front door and yell, what the hell are you doing?
Sure.
But this is not like when people used to come to Camden Yards, they would sit with us. I would say you can't criticize the other players because there would be times I was like, that's his wife, that's his girlfriend. You cannot do this because you're sitting with me. Sure. And I don't want it to get back to the locker room.
But you, in that case, you weren't a fan, though. You viewed it as like, this is a professional.
Oh, this is his job.
This is his job. And so I do wonder if so a couple of things, because I brought her up.
First of all, she has to be hot.
Thank you. So,
well, I don't know her. I didn't pull this up.
So first of all, she's 30. So
geez.
She is 4 years Baker's elder. Yes. So just throwing that out there. She graduated. She graduated. She's from Nebraska. She graduated from the University of Nebraska. I'm going to assume she is not a noob to the game of football. I'm going to assume that
even if she was when they met, she's learned a lot.
And even I would argue the odds are in our favor that she knew before they got married or before they met. I'm assuming if you're
my brother's wife was not a baseball person. She did not come from a baseball family. Now she knows a lot about baseball.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is she probably wasn't born like next to Yankee Stadium. I'm guessing if you're from Lincoln, Nebraska, and you go to the University of Nebraska,
that's a fair assessment. That's a fair assessment.
I'm assuming that the people from State College
they have a class in high school at Lincoln, Nebraska. Yes,
and then go to Penn State. No football.
You have. I'm with you. That's
so I'm gonna give Emily the benefit of the doubt that she knows football. I wonder in her psyche that balance between being a wife and a fan. I'm guessing it's very hard.
Yes.
It has to be.
Especially when your husband is taking public criticism.
And especially if you feel like you know what you're talking about, which I'm assuming she does. Like, I'm assuming
I'm sure she has a clue.
Yeah. It's very, so like you said, like when you come home at night, that dynamic, after she does that, I cannot imagine, personally, I would have been upset. But I don't know. I mean, I come on here and I talk about my girlfriend all the time.
Well, see, but the other thing, because you know the locker room environment. I'm sure that there are guys who didn't play well, whether it be receivers, whether it be linemen, whether it be whoever. Obviously, the defense played well because they won 13-10.
Right.
But that there are guys that are coming up to Baker and saying, dude, I'm sorry. And, like, I got to catch that. You know, I'm sorry about all running backs missing blitz pickups and linemen, having audible calls that they miss. That in the locker room, that Baker may be like, listen, you're calling this guy out. This guy just apologized to me. And let's not get Baker has not gone to the upper echelon. He's still a little, I think he scrambles backwards way too much. I don't think he needs to step up through more, because when you go backwards, if you do get sacked, now you've lost 15 yards, and it's hard to hit guys downfield when you're going the wrong way. He's still super young, but there's a lot to Baker's game that he is not in the top, 6 quarterbacks in the NFL.
I think where you were trying to go, or where you were leading me to, and I agree with you. Baker Mayfield is not somebody who plays the game in a stereotypical way. And he's also somebody who is not quiet or dull. He is somebody who is flamboyant. He is somebody who is willing to kind of speak up, or he's not just on the sideline, with his hands folded, just waiting for the defense to come off. So I think when you add all of that into it, it almost makes what his wife did seem exaggerated. Because it's not like Emily is defending this young quarterback who's quiet and humble and would never Baker Mayfield. It's not like Baker Mayfield has never defended himself before, or has made statements similar to this. So it almost feels like a doubling down. And again, I don't even know if that's her fault.
It's probably not, and I don't think it's surprising.
No, it is not.
If Josh Allen's wife comes out, he's probably not married, because he's probably. I need to get off this. You're 20. However old, you're 23 years old. You're an NFL quarterback. You're good looking. You're making commercials all over the place. Why are you marrying a 28-year-old?
Well, she's 30.
Yeah, but I assume they've been married for 2 years.
I get what you're saying. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe when Baker...
Derek Jeter did not marry Derek Jeter never got married during his playing career. He just dated Miss Universe and Mariah Carey.
Maybe when Baker Mayfield was a freshman at Oklahoma, there was this good-looking senior from Nebraska.
There was this grad student at Nebraska that was...
listen, when you were a freshman at Oklahoma, it might have been cool to date the grad student at Nebraska.
I'm sure it was.
Okay.
But when he was a walk-on somewhere, he was nobody.
Here, I'll say this too. Notice this whole conversation. I never downplayed the strength of their relationship, because she must care. There's a lot.
She's coming to his defense.
Yes,
no doubt about it.
There's a lot of relationships where people would never come to the defense or would never stand up or say something. So,
and there's probably some good football wives. You're like, you're right. He sucked today. And I'm going to tell him as soon as he gets home.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear the story? Phil Simms' wife. I thought Phil Simms was a better commentator than got credit for. He's not as good as Romo, but I like Phil Simms as a commentator. As a quarterback, he was boring. He was like typical. He was just your game manager, but he was good. He was good at what he did. There was a story that it was like whatever, and he was the Giants. And you get into football weather in the Meadowlands. Half the season it's cold and rainy, and and he woke up one Sunday morning, had a fever of like 103. And his wife looked at him and said, well, you better suck it up because this is a big game today. And like that's part of it too.
Yeah.
You better suck it up.
That's the mentality.
That is beautiful.
It's good. Anything else before we have to go?
No, lunch.
Okay, lunch.
Yay.
Yeah, you were hungry. You were ready.
So tomorrow we have our Thanksgiving show. Are we doing a show Friday?
Yeah, maybe. You want to do a Black Friday show? We should walk around and shop with people. That's what we should do.
Give them shopping advice.
Yeah.
You should get. You know what we should do? This is what we should do. We should get a hidden camera, and we should go around on Black Friday and just shove stuff in people's carts when they're not looking.
Oh.
Wouldn't that be fun? And then we can, when they get to the checkout counter,
right?
And you got some
like,
old
where did
lady
this
who's
come
got like a
from?
12-pack of condoms in her cart, and
Right.
she's like, I don't know why these are there. And that would be awesome. Somebody's probably done that. We're probably late to the party.
I'm sure there's people online doing it, but no, we could.
They wouldn't do it as well as we would.
I was thinking we would just like set up a table outside of Kohl's or something, but you went like the extra. You went in depth.
You know what? The first thing that comes to my mind when we set up a table outside of Kohl's,
No idea.
how cold I am.
Really?
It's November 26th.
Yeah.
It's cold.
It's going to get colder. This isn't that bad.
Well, I realize that, but you know where I'm not going when it gets colder? To sit outside.
Weak. So weak. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Thank you to our sponsors. And be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news.
I'm weak.
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We will see you tomorrow.